Thank you, everyone at Musa Masala. I really appreciate it. I've heard people call Everest the highest garbage dump on the planet many times, and it's a term that has always upset me greatly. It really has, and I even disagreed with it. I wasn't looking at the truth around me. I've been to the high camps on Everest on both sides. I've witnessed it firsthand myself, and I'm going to tell you a quick little story, and this is probably where it all started coming really true for me. In 2016, I was at the South Col before my partner and I left for the summit, and I was laying in my tent resting. We were going to leave for the summit that evening at 8 p.m., and there was some activity out in the South Col. Now we're looking at 26,000 feet or about 8,000 meters in elevation. I heard somebody walking outside of my tent. I was alone inside of it, and you can imagine the walls of a tent are thinner than this fabric that I'm wearing here. Somebody stood probably this far from my head on the outside of the tent and unzipped their down suit and defecated literally about a foot from my head. And I was like, dude, what the hell? Oh, and you could hear the guy out there. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was angry not because of me, of it being so close to me. I was like, there are bags for that, right? So that human feces that got deposited 1 foot from me while I was trying to rest is probably still there right now. And so the permanence of this at such a high altitude became very real for me that day. Anyway, it's shocking for someone who has not visited there to conjure up their idea of Everest, this unknown frontier, the far reaches of our planet. How could it ever be tarnished by overuse and carelessness? It's pure and pristine. Well, it's not the case. 1,300 people were at Everest Base Camp this year. 1,300 people. One of our guests today, Dan Mazer, told me yesterday that there were 650 toilets alone at base camp. 650 toilets at base camp. Better than not enough toilets. But you start to think about that. Another guest of ours tonight, Diana Youssef from an organization called Change Water, says that every human being basically generates about a liter, like imagine a Coke bottle or Pepsi bottle, a plastic bottle, a liter of waste a day. Right? So urine and feces. So you put 1,300 people at Everest Base Camp for 6 weeks or 2 months, and there are 1,300 of those every single day that needs to be dealt with. It's possible to take care of it, but it hasn't been dealt with very well, and we're going to talk a lot about that tonight. In 1953, when the British, in their successful first ascent, arrived, Mount Everest was one of the loneliest places on Earth. The thought of 1,300 people living in base camp each spring during the peak of climbing season would have been thought of as some weird attempt at humor, not what is now a modern-day fact at the world's highest peak with 650 toilets in 2021 alone there during the peak of the season. Those early expeditions that came to climb on Everest, the best information we can receive shows that they didn't do things much differently than the way they did things at home. Trash was burned on Everest. The human waste was dumped or into crevasses along with other biodegradables, or there were latrines dug and then covered over when they were filled. Everest being so remote and isolated, I don't think anyone back then could have imagined that it would ever have been a problem, that there would be too much garbage or too much human waste. higher up on the mountain, things weren't a lot different, maybe even a little bit worse, thanks to long conversations with my mentor, Bradford Washburn, some years ago. He told me about abandoned camps of the 1952 Swiss and the 53 British expeditions. At the time when they abandoned those camps, they probably figured no one would ever go there again. And it didn't even matter. Tents, food canisters, fuel canisters, sleeping bags, oxygen bottles, backpack frames, you name it. Everything was left up there, and they've been blown away by the wind, and some things are still washing out down below at base camp from some of the middle section camps from early expeditions. And with the coming of more expeditions also came more and more trekkers into the Everest region. Each year now, over 100,000 people visit the Khumbu region, or the Everest region, many of them trekking all the way up to Everest Base Camp, putting an immense amount of pressure on the resources there. When I first visited Everest in 1995, I can remember taking photos and video of monks from the Tenboche Monastery coming back from the forest with loads of wood on their backs to burn, to use as fuel in the kitchen or for warmth, and that no longer takes place. And with the trekkers also really came a higher level of prosperity for the Sherpa living in the region, but it also came a lot more garbage, the toilet paper trail, as it was called, and more beer cans, more soda bottles, more uneaten food, more wood taken from the forest to help cook the meals for those trekkers. And thanks to the efforts of the Himalayan Trust, started by Sir Edmund Hillary back in the early 1960s, the Khumbu region has seen immense changes, reforestation projects, the building of schools, education, a huge thing for people to learn what's really happening to their own area and their own region, and to learn how to protect it from the pressures of outside visitors. You can imagine that growing up with Sir Edmund Hillary as your dad must have been a pretty amazing thing. Visiting the Everest region back in the day, the early 60s, that region made Sir Edmund Hillary famous, and then he devoted the rest of his life giving back. His son, Peter Hillary, with whom I had a conversation, talks passionately about his early experiences growing up there and the changes for the better that he's seen in recent years, in the last couple of decades, keeping the Khumbu region clean. Here's a bit of my conversation with Peter about the situation there in the Khumbu Valley and on Everest itself. It's a good thing. The people have benefited greatly from this infusion of outsiders. And how is the environment there? My guess is that it might be better in some ways. More trees, more reforestation. They don't cut trees down to burn things like that. But in the Everest Khumbu region, what's the state there? Is it really the highest garbage dump in the world that outsiders seem to say?
Yeah, look, I think the garbage dump stories really have got wildly overstated. I mean, certainly there was a period on the outskirts of villages or up near the base camp, there was rubbish lying around. That is true. But that has been cleaned up very, very substantially. It was cleaned up initially by foreign groups. I know my old friend Brent Bishop from Seattle had a group who went up there and removed a lot of rubbish from base camp and up from higher up on the mountain. There have been a number of efforts along those lines. But now the Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee based in Namche Bazaar, obviously the local people run this, and they've set up rubbish collection sites along the trails. They clear these, so they are developing the infrastructure. So it really is not so much of a problem anymore. I mean, obviously, more needs to be done. It needs to be done in all of our cities too, but I think a lot of that has been well addressed. There's a continuing problem up on the mountain, and I think really on Mount Everest, They need to take some of the bold steps that were taken, for example, on Denali. And the National Park Service came in with what when I went there, they said, look, we admit this is a very simple solution. You collect your own business in a little bag and you dispose of it only in the place that we say you can. But it really works. And I was delighted when I was up there on that amazing Alaskan mountain to find it absolutely pristine. Now, Denali did have the same human waste pollution issues that Everest did. I mean, there are something like 1,500 people climb the mountain each year. So simple mathematics tells you it could have been pretty nasty. And but these days it's fantastic. And the result is wonderful. But this needs to happen in Nepal. It's perhaps a little more challenging because there are cultural issues. So that's a challenge.
Musa Masala is a Utah-based nonprofit organization dedicated to providing education for safe, healthy, and culturally aware mountain travel. Our educational and fundraising projects include The original project is the illustrated book Musa Masala, Mountain Girl of the Himalaya, the story of an orphan Sherpa girl and her life-changing journey to Mt Everest. Proceeds from the sale of Musa Masala, Mountain Girl of the Himalaya support the Wongchhu Sherpa Memorial Hospital in Nepal. The final dream of climbing and business legend Wongchhu Sherpa, the hospital is nearing completion. Each year, Musa Masala engages in several fun and exciting fundraising projects to cover our production and giving expenses. Our passion at Musa Masala is to combine our love of the outdoors and our professions as medical workers while respecting the environment and other cultures. We look forward to seeing our own growth as these dreams of education, healthcare for the underserved, and enjoyment of the mountains continue.
A lot of the cleanup effort is taking place off the mountain. Tommy Gustafsson is the managing director of Sagarmatha Next. It's a beacon for sustainable tourism in the Khumbu region, located above Namche Bazaar. Sagarmatha Next will be the connection between the local community and visitors in discovering what sustainability is and how waste can also be used to create art and become repurposed into something completely different. Here's Tommy to show us the facility and give us the rundown.
So welcome to Sagarmatha Next. This is a facility for visitor information, but mainly focused on upcycling, recycling solid waste materials, and inspire visitors and locals to be participating in the solutions for solid waste handling in the Khumbu Valley. And these are the surroundings. Kumbila mountain behind. Tamserku, Kusum Kangaroo. And down valley we can see the Sagarmatha National Park entrance in Jurzale, Monjo. And up in these clouds we have Mountain Kongde. Sagarmatha Next has then developed and tested a collective waste transportation system for the solid waste that we call Carry Me Back. The idea is to offer all visitors and locals the opportunity to take a Carry Me Back bag containing 1 kilogram of processed waste, shredded, baled plastics and metals, and carry it with them when returning back down to Lukla. The Carry Me Back test pilot was done in October of 2019, and over a 5 weeks period, more than 2,000 visitors, guides participated and brought more than 4,000 kilos of waste back down to Lukla. With the future built-up system, with participation of a majority of visitors, guides, staff, and locals, an approximate 80 to 100 tons would be possible to transport out of the valley, with everyone participating and making a small effort. The overall vision and mission of Sagarmatha Next is to assist and support SPCC and the local communities to create a clean and waste-free Khumbu and Sagarmatha National Park, with no more burning or leaving any waste behind. Furthermore, the vision is also to be able to offer other mountain regions in Nepal, as well as around the world, with similar challenges, a concept that can be adapted and scaled up for their specific needs. Thank you so much for your attention, and all the best for a great conference.
I read an article recently, a blog actually, by an adventurer mountaineer, Stefan Nessler, and he was writing about our next guest, David Leaño Gonzalez, a 7-time summiter of Mount Everest. From both sides he has summited, and a lifelong devotee to stretching the boundaries of human endeavor in sports and adventure. And David, for his more than a decade of climbing on Everest, has always been devoted to carrying out whatever he brought in, and that includes bringing out in bags his own human waste. He's been a part of Eco Everest expeditions for over 10 years and has been fully committed to keeping the mountains, Everest, and the areas where he travels clean. David and his Everest teams have brought down more than 10 tons of trash. And in the blog post, he said, "I try to leave the mountains cleaner than I found it, but with so many people, no oversight and no mountain ethics, the problem is out of control. Most summit aspirants don't even care about Everest," says David. "They only climb Everest to get a photo at the summit and post it on social media. That's it. No respect for them. It's irrelevant if the mountain is a garbage dump or if they litter it while they are there." David is stunned that in more recent years, even the Sherpa are known to pollute the high camps. And he said it at one time was known as a sacred mountain, but that has changed, and he doesn't blame them in any regard. But he says that everybody is guilty of it. Here's a conversation I had very recently with David about his experiences there and his shock at how bad the problem has become. And he also has some pretty straightforward and important ideas on how to fix the problem. Radical, some might say, absolutely necessary in his outspoken opinion. This is my conversation with David Leaño Gonzalez.
In 2018, I spent the beginning of the climbing season in Kanchenjunga. I was trying to climb there, so I hiked in, did all my acclimatization. And that year, I had the plan of climbing the 4 highest peaks in the world the same year.
Wow.
People had been summiting Everest for about a week by the time I got there, and so this was late in the season. I don't remember exactly which day I was on the summit, but almost everyone was off the mountain. So I got to see for the first time how the mountain looked after everyone had left, and it was shocking, shocking, shocking. Not only the South Col, but Camp 2 was an absolute mess. I mean, there were obviously torn tents and the gas canisters that you see, broken tent poles, but bags and bags of poo. But we, at least I always took down my own bags. It was shocking to see at Camp 2 just those bags left over everywhere, completely defeating the point of bringing down human waste. No, because it's not only up there, but it's inside a bag that is not biodegradable, and it's going to be there for hundreds of years. Shiny bag, it was a mess. But even going up Camp 3, you would see the spots where tents had been, but there's a lot of stuff that is left behind up there. Food, just general junk, no? But the most shocking part was definitely the South Col, which it was just, I mean, just having the logos of the tent cut out so you could not identify who that tent belonged to. Those tents were not destroyed. They were perfectly fine. They just didn't want to carry them down.
That's thank you. That's really, really helpful to hear that and the backstory of it and how you kind of came to this realization. And I totally understand that one of the things you're saying is that if it wasn't for all the outside people, the Sherpa wouldn't be up there in the first place. But everybody, I think what you're saying is everybody should be held accountable equally, and that especially, almost maybe even more so, goes to the expedition organizers and or the operators. Could you kind of tell me again about some ideas you had about the idea of maybe fining people or revoking permits for organizers to operate on the mountain? Just kind of a, maybe a penalty system or a reward system consequently as well.
Right. See, for example, one idea that I had is you in many mountains you have designated camping areas. I think for the big companies, you can there's so much money involved in Everest expeditions that it would be possible to have someone up there actually designating areas for camps for each of the companies. No? I know that many times they just run up there. Now they even leave caches up there, which was not allowed until I think 2015 when they started leaving stuff up there. And just having people be accountable for that area that they're occupying. You could do the same in Camp 3. You could do the same in the South Col. And yeah, for independent climbers, you could have a different area and have somebody up there actually check that each company is leaving that area as clean as when they occupied it at the beginning. Now, that doesn't solve the problem that they could just be grabbing the leftover junk and throwing it in a crevasse. But you have to start somewhere. No, I think that's something that you can do. But I think making foreign companies accountable, at least shaming them publicly. I've also been in the Chinese side of the mountain. I've climbed it successfully once. I've been there 2 other times when I was trying to do the double summit. And trash is not a problem in the Chinese side. So why is it a problem in Nepal? It's not a problem in China, because they're extremely strict.
I personally agree with David about imposing harsh fines or bans on companies or individuals who litter and leave their waste up high on the mountain. And he went so far as to name some of the very well-known companies, one American company in particular. But this isn't about pointing fingers. This particular program, that's for a different time and a place. But in talking about it, it's a path towards solving the problem, pointing that finger and perhaps publicly calling out these companies in a different venue might be the only way to change that without banning them from the mountain. So I just have to say, removing one's own self from high camp, from 26,000 feet or 8,000 meters up in the death zone, it is a huge endeavor. It is not easy to even walk around up there, but there are so many resources and wealthy individuals who come to Mount Everest every year that there has to be a way to start managing this problem and to publicly point fingers at those who are violating it, purposefully at least. There are many efforts to make changes on the mountain, some that are working very, very well. And at base camp, if one were to ever take part in a mountaineering expedition to Mount Everest, they would quickly become familiar with the Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee, or known as the SPCC. It's an oversight and management organization to manage garbage and human waste, not only on the mountain, but throughout the Khumbu region. And earlier I showed you some photographs of waste bins on the trails and pickup resources and efforts that take place throughout the Khumbu Valley to manage the garbage and the litter there. I interviewed a representative from the SPCC recently, Ms. Yangdi Doma Sherpa of the SPCC, and she discussed their efforts on Everest in the Khumbu region on the trekking trails and how they are endeavoring to protect the region from the growing crowds now and into the future. It's an upbeat conversation. Progress is being made. Here's my conversation with Yangdi Doma Sherpa.
Like for like almost like 25 years now, we have our focus has been on waste management, and as you have already aware that the main reason why this SPCC was formed because there was no such rules existed at that time, and then that's why the organization came to address those issues. And since then, we have been working in the waste management. And so our mainly when we divide our work will be focused on like base camp of the mountains and then trekking trails and settlements. I usually explain that way. That's much easier because those are the main thematic area, the areas that we focus on. So we are an NGO based in solely in Khumbu, and we work in partnership with the Ministry of Tourism and Nepal Mountaineering Association. And as you're aware, in the mountains, you are required to have their refundable garbage deposit. Each climber is required to do that deposit with the Ministry of Tourism and NMA.
And how much is that?
Maybe for I think Everest, it's $4,000.
Yeah.
So, and then the peaks around 350, something like that. It's different for the different mountains.
Yeah.
So, but their deposit is with the Nepal Mountaineering Association or Ministry of Tourism when they issue the permits. So it doesn't come to us. So it hasn't to do with us. The rule is that at the base camp, you are supposed to keep all your garbage with it. And then at our office, they are supposed to submit all the garbages they created. So at Everest Base Camp, for sure, like we have our one office, and then people stay there for almost like 2-3 months. And then at Everest Base Camp, it's quite effective because there is a monitoring thing. It's just right there. So the more challenging that we face right now is like above the base camp. We felt that there are a lot of garbages, in the old garbages still left on the mountain from like many years before. There are still people saying that they are still seeing, and then the dead bodies. So that's why in 2019 we also initiated the Everest cleanup campaign. So it's a joint collaboration. So in 2019, SPCC took the lead to bring all the stakeholders, the local level government, central level government, and then other NGOs, INGOs department. We brought it together. We worked with the Nepal Army, and we did the first campaign in 2019. And we collected around 10 tons of waste and 4 dead bodies in 2019. And 2020, there is no Everest, there was no expedition because of the pandemic. And 2021, the Nepal Army, with the other partners, they took the lead, and they did it. So I'm not sure like the exact amount of how much they collected, but I'm sure it could be like around 10 tons and several dead bodies. So I think we believe that it should be done continuously for at least 4 or 5 years, because it's conducting a cleanup campaign once in the Mount Everest is not possible to get all the garbage down. The weather problem is there. Sometimes the snowfall coverage, and sometimes the melting, and sometimes the old garbage coming out again and again.
I had an opportunity to speak with one of the more respected guides and expedition operators in the business, Damien Benegas. He is the brother of Willie Benegas. If you've been in the mountains or been on Everest or been on Aconcagua or Denali or many of the mountains around the world, you have heard of them. They are of the Benegas Brothers Expeditions Company. And Damien was really interested in speaking about what the problem really is over there. Fairly obvious that the problem is that there are too many people over there. But why are there too many people? Well, Damien spoke emphatically about the low budget expedition operators having less resources. His interview was revealing, and here is a short clip of, I wish I could play the whole thing right now. It was pretty amazing, but here's to the point of the garbage crisis on Everest.
Everest is a natural resource for Nepal, and we have to accept that. That's their natural resource. And Nepal is not a country who have the same value that Denali has. That is only 200 people can go up.
Yeah.
So
I want the truth told, but I don't want to point at anybody. But
okay, I will give you the truth.
Give it to me.
As an industry thing, the evolution or the change in the industry. Okay, so if you're a small company and your clients have certain standards of knowledge and strength and whatever, I need 2 staff for every 3 clients. As the quality of the clients diminish, I need more staff to support those clients. Because those clients all the time, they cannot unclip or clip or whatever. So now I have a lot more support for that person to go up and down. So then they say, okay, hold on a second. I have 100 clients going up and down, and then I need, from those things, I need at least 50 people to babysit these people. I don't have enough resources to carry garbage down. It's cheaper to cut the log of a tent, leave it there, than to carry the tent down, because I need to have the human manpower to help the people down. So garbage, all that stuff, pass to a secondary thing. So that standard of guiding, that's going to become volume instead of quality. That's a direct correlation to garbage. And I remember the companies with Asian clients who they pick up the tent and they left the cups, everything, the garbage right there. They don't care. Because the responsibility is, look, Tom, if you go up and you guys, your staff drops garbage, you go, hey guys, how about this? We got to print this down, because also it's your responsibility as a client to keep the mountain clean. And for you to be, hey, hold on a second, I'm going with this company, and this company is not cleaning the mountain, So everyone responsible thing. And the mechanics of the industry is such now that there are no human resources available on the company to look after themselves. And that started 5-6 years ago. That's when it exploded.
Damien and I talked for about 45 minutes, and one of the things he told me is that he and his brother and their company will no longer be guiding on Everest in the pre-monsoon season in the spring, and will only be guiding post-monsoon, he says, because he doesn't want to put himself and his clients at the greatest risk of having the other people be the greatest danger on the mountain, as opposed to Everest itself being the one objective that we need to keep and pay attention to. Sobering indeed from one of the guides that represents the top of the cream of the crop. And thank you, Damien, for your time. I will again be sharing the majority of that conversation with Damien on my podcast, The Happiness Quotient. The government of Nepal commissioned a cleanup effort in the mountains led by the Nepali army. They used high-altitude climbing Sherpa for the higher elevations. Super Phula Sherpa is a member of Musa Masala and a guide at Wongchhu Peak Promotion. He was there as part of the cleanup team, and here is his report.
Namaste everyone. I am Phula Sherpa from Nepal. I am going to share you guys with these some photos and videos of mountain cleaning program 2021, which is organized by Nepal government and led by Nepal Army. Luckily, I got a chance to work with this campaign. The campaign plan is to collect 35 tons of garbage from 6 different mountains, but the campaign was challenged due to the impact of cyclone and coronavirus pandemic. Despite the target of collecting about 35 tons of garbage. So under the leadership of Nepal Army, we collected 27.67 tons of garbage and 4 dead bodies from the 6 mountains, including world highest peak, Mt Everest. 112 people are, including Nepal Army and Sherpa, were active in this campaign. There are more to do. Nepal government should continue this campaign coming year too. And all the trekking and mountaineering companies should stop, pack and store at Camp 2, because many companies are storing things at Camp 2 for next season, and some of the companies are not able to do the expedition next year. So that will be a garbage for mountain. There are lots of trash at Camp 2 which I saw this year, and we collected it. Still, there are more under the ice, which will come out after the couple years. So, government should do the cleaning campaign continue. Thank you.
Namaste, my name is Raz, I do a mountain guide and also founder of Let's Clean Nepal. Today I would like to tell you about myself and also about Let's Clean Up Nepal. We have been cleaning our mountains since 2017, and until today we have cleaned more than 20 times in the different valley, in the Everest, Annapurna, Langtang, Manaslu and the Mustangs, etc. So Let's Clean Nepal is not only cleaning the mountains, but we also do different activities in the different part of Nepal. We go to the school and educate our children how to reduce plastic pollution and how we can become a healthy, and also educate our girls and women in the school and in the communities with the reusable sanitary pad. Also, we give education about better health for their women's health, and also we do different sanitation program in the school, just like oral hygiene and also healthy, how we can be healthy life. And thank you so much for joining me. Let's do something together in the coming days. We can do something together. Thank you so much. Stay safe.
Yangdi Doma told me that there are over 120 garbage bins throughout the Khumbu, as well as several public toilets installed. And one of their current major efforts is to take care of the human waste that is collected at Everest Base Camp. At the present time, the waste is carried in large 50 or 60 gallon blue drums on the backs of porters to the nearby village of Gorakshep, which is, for a normal person, is a couple, maybe 3-hour mellow walk away. And they are dumped into holes, and after those holes are filled up, they get covered up. It's a growing problem, obviously, and our next guest, Dan Mazer, has been on Everest as an expedition leader and guide for more than 20 years and has taken a personal interest and taken it upon himself to help and try to fix and solve the problem of human waste on Everest. Dan tells me that each season there are 12 tons, nearly 26,000 pounds or 12,000 kg of human waste removed from base camp and carried in those large blue drums to Gorakshep, dumped there. And how many more years can this go on? With 1,300 people last year in Everest Base Camp, it can only go so far, since that waste isn't really biodegrading. It's very cold there most of the year. It's something that's going to fill up and has to be solved in some way, somehow. Dan and a group of concerned climbers and trekkers have started the Everest Biogas Project, a facility that would literally convert the human waste into usable gas for fuel, and then that would be provided to the many Sherpa who stay and the porters who stay in Gorakshep in a, if you will, kind of a lodge that was built just for them. Here's my interview with Dan Mazer about his efforts to try and solve the human waste problem on Mount Everest. Give us an idea. If somebody is listening to this, what's the environmental situation on Mount Everest today as we know it?
Base camp is big, to accommodate 1,300 people. It's going to be huge, and there's going to be a lot of toilets there. I hung out with the human waste porters for a whole week this year and took a lot of photos and talked to them quite a bit. And there was, I think 9 guys looked like that carried waste down. They told me they made 200 trips, 200 drums, and each drum, the average weight of a drum is like 60 kilos. So that's about 12,000 kilos of human waste they carried out of there this year. They just carry it down. They filled up all the available holes. They've been doing it for years. They started taking the human waste off the glacier. I forget what year that was. I can find out, but I think it was in the mid 2000s or something like that, 2005 or something like that. And then They were just digging holes on the side of the glacier right by under Pumori, but they filled up that whole area. There was like a big area. They put so many holes and there's no more. And then I found out about this group of engineers called Engineers Without Borders. A bunch of people from their club were like, yeah, we want to do something about this. So then I was like, okay, great. And I thought it was the perfect thing for their club, you know, because biogas, right? It involves a flame. You're cleaning up garbage. You're taking, dirt and making it into gold, right? And something useful. So that's exciting. Also, involves fire and it could explode. I know engineers love, making bombs and stuff. They love that. So there's excitement right there, right? The thing could blow up. Well, how about if we do this on Everest, make biogas on Everest? I was like, really? It's cold up there. And they were like, so what? We're engineers. We love a challenge and we'll figure this out. So then they started studying this. And after 10 years, they come up with an awesome design. And the design was approved and checked by Seattle University researchers working together with the Kathmandu University. So they had like a collaboration between the two universities,
Wow.
So that was really exciting. And so they made this design of a buried in the ground, well-insulated biogas tank heated by solar panels. They're going to put all this 12,000 kilos of human waste into it. And it's going to digest it and make it into gas that the porters can cook on. It's going to be hooked up to the porter's shelter. There's a big porter's shelter there. I heard it could sleep 50. It was built by Doug Scott's organization. The thing treats all the human waste and then it produces fertilizer where the pathogens have been reduced and removed so you can use it as good farm fertilizer, and it produces methane that you can cook on. So it's kind of a win-win situation, if you do it right.
Mm.
And so we're really excited about it. It's not that expensive to build the thing. I mean, a really fancy tea house in Gorakshep now, I know a guy who just built one. Those are running about $1.5 to $2 million to build one of those. And because of the transportation costs. But this biogas thing it's going to be about, I think we've penciled in around $600,000. So it's not even as much as a half a tea house. So,
wow.
And when you think about it, I mean, to treat the human waste of 1,300 people, man, that's no joke, right?
After speaking with Dan, I got to thinking, $600,000, it's not a ton of money in the grand scheme of things, but it is enough money that it could take a while to raise that money unless somebody steps forward, or an NGO or some governmental organization comes forward to help and try to provide that money. And then it's going to take some years to build that facility. Something more immediate I was thinking about, like, is there something that might be a better way to solve the problem? And I wondered how waste is managed in refugee camps around the world, where there's obviously a large gathering of people, and the human waste problem is certainly something. Do they truck it away? Do they have these facilities that convert the human waste? And as it would turn out, I found out about a company in my very own New England, based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it's called Change Water. And their mission is to develop and deploy safer, smarter, more dignified sanitation globally. 3 billion people plus on the planet lack safe toilet access, and 1 billion defecate openly. That's a lot of people, and Mount Everest is just a tiny blip on the map. As Change Water says, chronic underinvestment into sanitation infrastructure means people in many poor and vulnerable communities live with their sewage. With no toilets or pipes, there's no way to flush. Change Water Labs is developing a low-cost, compact, waterless toilet for non-sewered households and communities. I spoke with founder and CEO Diana Youssef about their work and posited to her if it might be a viable option to use on Mount Everest. Here's my revealing and awesome interview with Diana Youssef of Change Water. This isn't a problem unique to Mount Everest. Probably the unique aspect of it is that the people there, most of them have a lot of money in relatively speaking. And it's kind of sad that this problem hasn't been dealt with and fixed. Yeah. And it might be, you could blame it on the government perhaps, but that's kind of lame. So I thought maybe I could ask you, in making that connection, tell me a little bit about your organization and how it got started, and then maybe we can draw distinctions to Mount Everest.
Right. It's funny. First of all, regarding Mount Everest, I mean, a couple of years ago, somebody was saying, oh, wouldn't that be a great, like, sort of project to get visibility to what you were doing if you figured out a partner to do this on Everest. So, I mean, we did it, at the time we were still head down in the lab. So there wasn't really a thought of that, but just, it's funny that, this isn't the first time I've heard about the issue. So I have to say that the idea started in a venue that is much higher than Everest. So I back in 2009, I was consulting to NASA on ideas around recycling water for the space station. So, because they also have a problem with, resources on the space station, and, you can't throw things out, and you can't turn on the faucet and expect more water to come out. You only have the water that you bring up with you. And so I was looking at a portfolio of ideas with them around recycling water on the space station. And one idea that was mentioned kind of in passing, and they didn't really do much with it, was, could breathable materials, so these are the materials that we kind of know, like similar to dry fit, like the stuff that you have in your, high-tech sportswear that keeps you dry while you're working out. Couldn't we use breathable materials as a way to passively separate water away from contaminants or away from waste? And in doing that, you're essentially pulling out the molecular water, leaving the waste behind, and then you can take that molecular water and use it again and again, because it's really just pure water. And so I kind of, it just caught my attention. I was like, this is, I come from a background of kind of a hodgepodge, but one of the things that's been a driver for me is trying to use science and technology as a way to solve problems in developing countries. And maybe the reason for that is because my parents are immigrants from a developing country, and specifically they're from the Middle East, and water is sort of top priority in the Middle East. So I guess it's not a big surprise that I kept thinking about, what are we going to do with water? And so, as a scientist, it makes sense to me that, trying to find a low energy way to treat water or to get rid of wastewater would be a really good thing to do, especially for places that are low resource, like developing countries. And I sort of made the connection, like, yes, the space station is the ultimate off-grid location, but there are plenty of off-grid locations here on Earth. And couldn't we use this as a low energy, low cost way to essentially deal with dirty water, essentially? I look at waste and I see it's a mix of things, but 95% of human waste is water. And if you pull out that water, you shrink the problem down to something much more manageable, something much safer, something much lower cost to deal with. And so I just kept thinking of this as like, there's got to be a way that we can help solve this problem by subtracting the water part. And initially, people said that's not a thing. And I'm like, it has to be a thing. If 95% of what we're dealing with is water, and the big problem is you can't flush it away, and if you have to carry it around to get rid of it, that just can't be easy, and it can't be pleasant, and it must be really costly. I just figured, if we just take the water part out, then all of that becomes much easier. And better yet, you take the water out and you put it back in nature in its cleanest form, this becomes a much more sustainable solution. And, of course, trying, it's a really obvious use case to put this in remote areas where, you're trying to protect a really pristine natural ecosystem, especially one that starts to, become more trafficked with human beings. Mm-hmm. So I think, it's close to our heart, to, and also toilets are a way that you can essentially deliver huge social impact and huge environmental impact, with just one intervention.
It's not just about pretty mountain aesthetics and a pristine mountain tourist experience. It's about the health of the people who live below the glaciers. The pollution left on the glaciers leaches into the water supply, sickening the people below. I want to mention, and on the behalf of all of us at Musa Masala, mention that we lost our friend and great supporter, Dr. Paul Auerbach, known as the father of wilderness medicine. Paul, along with Dr. Jay Lemery, wrote a book called Enviromedics. Here they clearly lay out the health of a community is threatened by the growing pollution and environmental damage in it and around it. An environment in crisis is a population in crisis. Here is a photo of Paul with Musa's Julie Ramirez and Tatiana Havreluk in front of Ama Dablam in Nepal. Paul, you are missed. Thank you to all who have participated tonight in our forum on the garbage and human waste problem on Mount Everest and beyond. I'm honored and truly thrilled to have the opportunity to provide you with as much information as I could put together in a short amount of time to try to give people some idea of what the problem is and some ideas on how perhaps we could solve the problem going into the future. We all love Mount Everest. It's one of the most beautiful mountains in the world. It's meant a lot to me and to many, many people around the world. And I hope that we can all come together to try to solve this problem, which is certainly something that can be done. It's going to take the participation and the positive vibrations of many. So thank you again for being here. Have a wonderful time wherever you may be, and let us know what you think about this program. We'd love to hear from you. Sending it back to Musa Masala. Tatiana, take it away.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining us for our second show. We hope you learned something about the situation on Mount Everest with all the trash. And has anybody got anything else to say tonight?
We'll see you in the next parking lot.
Jam jam!